I found a lot of people have asked me, how do you make patties? How do you know what to put in a patty? You know, because I make a lot of patties, usually out of leftovers. And you can just put anything you want to in a patty. But we have a handout. Bob's going to hand this one out. And it's called one-of-a-kind loaf, and you can make it either a loaf or a patty. And you just have a choice. There's several sections, and you just choose one thing out of each section and put it together, and you've got a patty or a loaf. And throw in leftovers. I mean, I've used leftover spaghetti, I've used leftover beans, anything that you want to throw in there, it turns out fine. Ask Bob. And so it's just so easy to make vegetarian patties and loaves that it's just, I'm telling you, I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen, but you can make tasty stuff in just a few minutes. And then I have another handout. This is Hunter, lady on the back row in the beautiful white hair. She called and wanted a recipe for a lentil loaf or a lentil burger. And so I put some together. Did you have the other one too? Okay. And so if these are interesting to you, they're very easy. I've made these lentil patties for many years for hamburgers, like hamburgers. They make wonderful sandwiches. And so that's just
Good.
yes. Just cook lentils plain, just add salt. You can put those over rice. You can just eat them plain like a soup. If you add carrots and onion to lentils and a can of tomatoes, you've got a nice soup or just a casserole. Good on sandwiches. They're just wonderful food. A chicken seasoning that you can make yourself. And in this book, which is my favorite cookbook, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, you might want to look at it. It has in here a recipe for homemade chicken seasoning. And so if you want to write it down, I'll just read it to you. You've got a blank page in your cookbook, so. In this book, it's 107. Do you have this book?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful, isn't it? Okay, homemade chicken-like seasoning. You have 1/4 cup of fine food yeast flakes. And let me tell you, if you're not using food yeast, you're missing a treat. You can use those so many ways. They just really have a good flavor and filled with vitamin B. I would think if you wanted them fine, you would probably put them in a blender and make them fine. I would put this whole thing in the blender. 2 tablespoons of flavacol. And I wonder what in the world is flavacol, but it tells you what it is back here on page 102. It's popcorn salt. Can you believe that? And it's made by McCormick. And you can get it's manufactured by Gold Medal out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And I don't know if it's in the grocery store or not. I have not explored that. And I lost my page. Okay, the next ingredient is 2 tablespoons of onion powder. And 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And 2 tablespoons of sugar. Or fructose. Or whatever you want.
How much?
2 tablespoons. And you mix it all together and store it in an airtight container. And you can use it like chicken-like seasoning. And now I'm going to show you a sauce that is so basic, you can just do anything with it. You start with 1/4 cup of raw cashews. Raw cashews are just really easy to work with. They will make a creamy texture. You can use it like milk to put in soups and so forth. I put in 1 tablespoon of food yeast.
Is that the cooking yeast?
It's some people call it food yeast, some call it yeast flakes, some call it, what's the other name?
Nutritional yeast.
Nutritional yeast. It's all the same.
But it's different than the baking yeast.
Yes, definitely different. You don't want to use baking yeast in this.
Is that the stuff you put on your popcorn?
Yes, yes. It gives a cheesy. This is 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And this is garlic powder and onion powder, just like your recipe. And 2 cups of water. Ah! I don't like that little thing. That was only a cup and a half, so I didn't have a cup, half a cup. Dang, don't ever buy one of those. Now at this point, I'm going to grind this up and I'll show you. Get ready for some noise. Another thing, if you don't have a Vitamix, you need a Vitamix. I love my appliances. At this point, you have a nice creamy gravy type sauce. Now, at this point, you can do whatever you want to with it. This is the same recipe that's in the melted cheese sauce. Sauce. If I were making melted cheese sauce, I would add pimentos and lemon juice. And 2 more tablespoons of food yeast. If I were making gravy, which this is what this is going to be, do you all like biscuits and gravy?
Yeah.
That is the neatest recipe for gravy. In the morning, when Bob and I have this for breakfast, I will add some Morningstar sausage to it. And that'll just be a wonderful gravy. And as you cook it, for gravy, you can add water to make it however consistency you want. And that's what we have tonight to taste. I can show you right here. And I brought some homemade whole wheat bread to put it on if you want it. Then if I were going to make melted cheese sauce, I already told you that, didn't I? Okay, this is what I want to tell you about. Bean dip. You take a recipe of this is the cheese sauce, and you add a can of Rotel and a can of refried beans. And you stir it all up together, and you get a most wonderful, tasty bean dip. I've taken this to church socials, to any kind of party. It disappears quickly. And but this recipe, if you add, you can make mushroom soup. At this stage right here, put a can of mushrooms in. After you get it all blended, put a can of mushrooms in and then just barely blend it so it's not all, just has chunks in it. Wonderful mushroom soup. And cashews, believe it or not, are a low-fat nut. Everyone keeps saying cashews are so fattening. They're not. They're a low-fat nut. And so in this recipe, you don't have many calories and very little fat. And you can control the salt. I use chicken seasoning in this sometimes. Sometimes I just put salt. You can put in whatever. You can just put salt and pepper, whatever you want to flavor your gravy. And it just is wonderful. And now we get to taste all this stuff.